You want to talk about some books? Let's talk about some books. Hello and welcome to Our Shakespeare, the channel where we talk about Shakespeare from a 21st century American's perspective. If this is the sort of thing that you enjoy, make sure you subscribe to my channel and like and share this video. Today, I want to talk about essential Shakespeare books. Now, there are so many different Shakespeare books out there, and I do want to make clear that this is not my 10 favorite Shakespeare books. Rather, this is a list of books that I would recommend anybody have if they could only have 10 Shakespeare books and they really wanted to be able to have a full understanding of Shakespeare, be able to write papers about Shakespeare, have some primary and secondary sources. So that's what this list is for. I do want to offer the caveat up front that this list is focused primarily on Shakespearean drama, Shakespeare's plays. Now, these books are going to offer some insight into the poetry of Shakespeare, his sonnets and his longer form poems, but these books are mostly about the plays. So if that is of interest to you, I hope you will keep watching, and let's talk about what I think would be the 10 most essential Shakespeare books for anyone to have if they wanted to have a complete picture of Shakespeare in only 10 books. Now, up first, and probably the most important and probably the most obvious, is a good complete works. Now, there are many excellent complete works of Shakespeare books out there, and just because I'm going to recommend this one doesn't mean that there aren't others that are also excellent. I would say a good complete works of Shakespeare includes, obviously, Shakespeare's collected works, including the plays and the poems, but also includes notes as you read, as well as essays and commentary. And so the one that I'm going to recommend today, because it is my favorite, and it's probably my favorite because it's the one I used in grad school, is the Norton Shakespeare based on the Oxford edition. This is an excellent edition of Shakespeare's collected works. It's the one I recommend. There are others, but this is the one I recommend as your number one. Number two, which is going to be another primary source for you, or the primary source for you, would be Shakespeare's First Folio. So if you are unfamiliar, and maybe I'll do a full video on the First Folio. The First Folio is the first publication of the collected plays of Shakespeare. You can get a facsimile of the First Folio right here. I've got one, and they're fairly expensive, not nearly as expensive as an actual First Folio. This is the Norton facsimile. I think it is an excellent resource to go to if you're looking for the exact lettering, how things were punctuated and things like that in the original publication of Shakespeare. It doesn't have any notes, doesn't have any commentary. This is the direct source and the earliest source for many of Shakespeare's plays. Book number three, another primary source, is called Henslows Diary. Henslows Diary is an essential book for any Shakespeare scholar because this is basically the diary, the journal of Philip Henslow, who was the owner of the Rose Playhouse, which produced some of Shakespeare's plays. It lists his business transactions, and there's a lot of really excellent information in here for Shakespeare scholars to go through and to learn about the business of doing plays in Shakespeare's theater. And number four is the Shakespeare Lexicon and Quotation Dictionary. And even though this is in 2 volumes, I'm considering this one book. I have found this to be essential when I have been researching for papers and things like that. Also, as a director, I have found it very important, and at times as an actor as well. And what the Shakespeare Lexicon and Quotation Dictionary is it's basically every word that comes up in Shakespeare's plays, defined and located. And so it says a word, it'll tell you what the definition of that word is, and it'll tell you where you can find that word in the plays of Shakespeare. If you're curious how many times the word plague comes up, and I recently did a video about plague, you can look that up in here and you can tell exactly which plays referred to the word plague and how often, and you can even see the line and scene number and go find it. excellent resource for anybody who's interested in learning more about Shakespeare and taking a deep dive into his plays. Up next, we have William Shakespeare, a textual companion. This is a book that goes along with the Norton Shakespeare. It's a separate purchase. It's not, part of that purchase. But what makes this book essential and very interesting is this includes a whole lot of information about the textual problems in Shakespeare, about why different editors might choose to edit their copy of Shakespeare in a certain way. It also includes a heck of a lot of information about why the Norton editors decided to choose their chronology of Shakespeare, why they think this Shakespeare play was written before this other one. Whole wealth of information in here, a lot of great stuff, and I have found this useful for writing papers, particularly one I did on Timon of Athens and redating it to a different date. Really great information in here. William Shakespeare, a textual companion. Up next, we have another companion. This is the Oxford Companion to Shakespeare. And this is basically a Shakespeare encyclopedia. It's got, just like an encyclopedia, a wealth of information in alphabetical order. And if you were interested in learning any more about any element of Shakespeare, you would probably find it in here, explained in a clear and understandable way. So the Oxford Companion to Shakespeare is my next pick. And what number are we on? I don't even know. I think that was number 6. Yeah, I think that was number 6. Then this would be number 7. This is the Shakespearean Stage, 1574 to 1642 by Andrew Gurr. And what this is it is an excellent book. You might say authoritative book. It says so on the back, but also I have found it to be so, and it's a highly regarded book that talks about how Shakespeare's plays were staged during Shakespeare's lifetime. This is an excellent resource for that sort of thing. If that is your interest, the Shakespearean Stage needs to be part of your Shakespeare collection. And then my number 8 and my number 9 books are a little bit similar in kind of what they're about. And they are both, for lack of a better word, a biography. But I think anybody who is a student of Shakespeare, anybody who studies Shakespeare, should get at least a couple of different biographies of Shakespeare. They will kind of focus on different parts of his life. Some of them might find some facts that the other ones didn't have. So I've included 2 in this list that are each a little bit different in what they're after and were written at different times. The first one, and this is another one that I read for grad school, is William Shakespeare, A Compact Documentary Life. This is a good, straightforward biography, very focused on the facts. Here's the life of Shakespeare based on what we know, fairly straightforward. It's a solid book, maybe a little dry, but still a very good biography, fairly straightforward, and I highly recommend it that you have it in your Shakespeare collection. The next is a little bit more recent, I think a much more interesting read, which is Will in the World, Greenblatt's Will in the World. I believe this was published in 2004. And what I like about this particular book is I think it does more to not only talk about Shakespeare's life in a biographical manner, but also goes into some of the psychology may not be the right word, but how Shakespeare's life impacted the things that he wrote about. And I think that's really fascinating. And also, I think this is an excellent book for anybody who is unsure of whether or not this, dude from Stratford could have written Shakespeare's plays. We often call those folks anti-Stratfordians. I think this is a good book to explain how this young guy from Stratford could turn into perhaps the greatest writer of the English language in the world ever. And so definitely worth reading, and it's an entertaining biography. And the last book I'm going to include in the Essential 10 is a book about acting Shakespeare. because maybe it's I'm biased because I'm an actor and a director, but I do think an essential piece of understanding Shakespeare's plays is understanding how to play them. And so the main go-to book for actors all around in Shakespeare is John Barton's Playing Shakespeare. And what makes this a particularly interesting book, and I've got many books on acting Shakespeare behind me, but the reason I chose this one is because it is a conversation, basically, between some really big heavyweights in the Shakespeare acting world. And so this is basically a conversation between folks like Patrick Stewart, Judi Dench, Ian McKellen, and Ben Kingsley, talking with John Barton and how to adapt Elizabethan plays for the stage as actors. It's an excellent read, very illuminating, and it's from the greats. So this would be an excellent book to have in any collection about Shakespeare. So those are my 10 essential books. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. I would have a lot of trouble narrowing it down to 10. You see the books behind me. I've got other books at work. To be able to kind of narrow that down to 10 is really tough, and there's a whole lot of books that I really wanted to include on this list, and I didn't. If you have some books that you think are essential that you would like for people to know about, make sure to mention that in the comments below, because I'm certain there are some wonderful books that I didn't include in this list. In fact, I know there are, because there are some that I was really hand-wringing about whether or not to include. So, leave a comment if there's another book that you wish was on this list. If you've got any other ideas for videos you'd like to see about Shakespeare, let me know in the comments below. This video was an idea from a viewer, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to hear from you. And in the meantime, fare you well. I commend you to your own content.